At this very moment, someone less capable than you is moving ahead of you. Why? Because they present themselves with conviction. They speak without pause. They behave as though everything belongs to them, and people buy into it. Meanwhile, you pause. You analyze. You wait for ideal timing, for perfect phrasing, for the right emotional state. And while you're paused, someone else takes the opportunity that should have been yours. Certainty isn't a personality trait. It's a tool. And if you're not wielding it, someone else will turn it against you. Stoics saw this long ago. It's the daring who advance, even if they're unqualified. It's the cautious who remain stuck, even if they're brilliant. Because power doesn't favor the most capable. It favors the most sure of themselves. This message isn't for your comfort. It's not to motivate. It's to awaken control. You're about to learn how to erase indecision, speak with command, and move with the authority of someone who expects obedience. Listen carefully, because from now on, weakness won't be excused. It'll be replaced. You weren't born unsure. You were shaped that way, by habits, by rewards, by social expectations. You were trained to follow orders, to crave approval, to constantly ask, is this all right? What lives inside you right now is not a leader. It's a servant, designed to conform, programmed to please. A trained pet that twitches at criticism and waits for approval to act. That internal voice, the one that stalls, that second guesses, that says sorry before speaking. That's not your true self. That's the obedient version of you. And unless you silence it, you'll remain caged. True emperors didn't suggest, it directed. They didn't wait to be comprehended. They moved and let others catch on later. They didn't request influence. They claimed it, knowing that those who ask are unworthy of it. Transformation starts by flipping your instincts. When you feel like shrinking, expand. When the urge to justify arises, pause. When you want to apologize, lock eyes and remain still. Because commanding certainty doesn't come from readiness, it comes from doing what the submissive self would never attempt. You move faster. You take up physical and psychological space. You stop nodding in agreement. You stop softening your delivery. Your words become declarations, not ideas up for negotiation. Certainty isn't just mental, it's personal. And that identity is shaped by rebellion, not against others, but against the version of yourself that still seeks approval. So here's the first law. If it reduces you, eliminate it. Be it a thought, a pattern, or even a person, erase it. If it causes delay, face it. If it weakens you, reject it. If it begs to be liked, mock it. Society will advise you to be gentle, agreeable, and polite. But here's the principle. Agreeable men are utilities. They are used, then discarded, then replaced. The powerful don't aim to please. They are deliberate, restrained, in control, and tactical. And it begins by erasing that internal whisper still pleading to be accepted. You do not require approval. You don't need applause. You need one thing, the willingness to be feared, not by the world, but by the earlier version of yourself. Because once you silence the servant, the leader within you rises. The strongest don't make noise when they enter. They arrive with command. Not through chatter, but through silence, through their gaze, through their stillness. You don't need to be recognized. You don't need admiration. What you require is the ability to alter the atmosphere simply by appearing. That's how a person moves when the room belongs to him. Not because someone told him so, but because he acts as if it always did. Emperors saw this in the halls of power. Not all rulers wore crowns. Sometimes it was the man in the background who barely spoke. But when he did, the entire court stopped breathing. Silence is authority. You think talking makes you seem in charge. It doesn't. It makes you readable. The quiet one is feared because no one can predict him. When you walk into a space, you don't scan for acceptance. You don't search for validation. You observe. You absorb. You allow others to scramble to be noticed while you calculate. Your stance speaks before your lips do. Your pace is controlled, not from doubt, but from total composure. Apex predators don't rush unless it's time to strike. Until then, they wait, still, focused. Most people are oblivious to how fast they move, how quickly they speak, how often they interrupt. They do it to impress, to prove themselves, because they're still performing under someone else's judgment. But when you enter a space as if you already own it, you don't talk to gain favor, you speak to deliver verdicts. Each sentence closes a door. Every word lands like a conclusion, and people begin to listen with a different ear. They stop challenging. They begin adjusting themselves to you. And when others speak, you don't rush in. You wait. You allow them to reveal themselves, to show their need, their insecurity, their desperation. Because the first to speak often reveals what they're protecting. And once you understand that, you can bend them to your purpose. You're not following the flow of the room, you're pulling it toward you. Because influence at this level isn't about charm. It's about disrupting others' certainty merely by being near. So carry yourself like you've already won. Not out of arrogance, but like a man who's no longer competing. He's already chosen himself. If they respect you, good. If they don't, better. Because true strength is shown when approval becomes irrelevant. That's the apex of power, when nothing needs to be said, yet everything shifts in your favor. If the space didn't belong to you when you arrived, by the time you exit, they'll remember it as yours. Not because you demanded control, but because you never had to ask. Speech isn't just sound, it's strategy. And most men speak like they're requesting permission to exist. You can recognize them immediately. The rising inflection at the end of every phrase, the awkward laugh, the flood of I think, I'm not sure, and maybe. As if simply having thoughts is an intrusion. That's not speaking, that's surrendering. Emperors understood this clearly. Power doesn't always rest in content, it resides in delivery. And when you talk as if refusal isn't an option, people don't examine your reasoning. They yield to the pressure of your conviction. Here's the reality. People aren't driven by logic. They're ruled by emotion. They don't follow truth. They follow confidence. If your tone carries conviction, they assume you're correct. But if you sound unsure, they tune you out. Not because they've analyzed your ideas, but because hesitation makes them doubt your value. So what does an emperor voice sound like? It's measured, calm, absolute. You speak as if your words are conclusions, not opinions. You speak like someone who's used to being followed. Even in a room full of specialists, if you sound like a verdict, they defer. That's the key. Don't speak like you're introducing a thought. Speak like you're finishing the conversation. And here's what most won't teach you. Frequent talking isn't strength, it's exposure. The more you say, the more opportunities you give others to dissect, question, or worse, lose respect for you. Say less, mean more. And when you do speak, strip it of softness. Remove filler. No disclaimers, no preambles. Never say, I'm just sharing, or I might be wrong, or maybe this doesn't make sense. Those are escape routes for the timid. Close them. State what you mean and leave it in the air. Let silence follow. Let the room deal with it. Because a pause after a powerful statement dares others to push back. Most won't. Why? Because they fear what else you might unleash. Understand this. Your delivery is your real message. Words are surface. Tone is command. A steady, grounded, deliberate tone instantly signals where you stand in the hierarchy. Want to rise? Drop your pitch. Speak slower. Remove urgency from your rhythm. Speak like a man who's seen it all and needs no validation. Talk like someone who's already decided, and now the world has to adjust. You don't win verbal battles by shouting louder. You win them by sounding like your words are final, that your voice isn't a request, it's a rule. That's how leaders speak. That's how commanders speak. That's how kings speak before reclaiming what's theirs. If someone pushes back, don't explain. Pivot. Don't argue. Don't elaborate. Don't seek approval. Just say, I don't agree. Or even better, that's incorrect. Then move forward. Because when you refuse to justify yourself, you send a chilling message. Your reality isn't up for discussion. That's how you command a room without ever raising your voice. Because true presence isn't measured in decibels, it's measured in density. It's the gravity in your tone that makes people lean in. It's the unshakable composure that commands attention. You speak not with volume, but with mass. The unspoken belief that when you speak, it matters. When your voice enters a space, it changes the energy. Not through noise, not through dominance, but through certainty that feels immovable. You're not trying to prove correctness. You're speaking like someone who cannot be dismissed. You're not hoping to be acknowledged. You're talking like you couldn't care less if others agree, because eventually they will. That's influence. And from this moment forward, that becomes your new standard. Speak like that, or say nothing. Certainty without emotional discipline is just for show. You can stand tall, speak boldly, move with purpose. But if someone can still provoke you with a phrase, then you're not powerful. You're exposed. That's where most fail. They master the image. They master their tone. But their emotions still belong to everyone around them. A subtle insult and they break. A compliment and they melt. A long silence and they spiral. You're not liberated until you conquer the unseen war, the one raging inside your own head. And that battle begins with reconstructing who you are. Emperors understood this clearly in the realm of politics. They didn't fear open enemies. They feared needing anyone, emotionally or otherwise. They didn't trust affection. They trusted leverage. Because once others know how to influence your emotions, they know where to press. And when they know that, you're not intimidating. You're manageable. And manageable men are discarded the moment their usefulness fades. So here's the shift. You no longer act out of impulse. You begin to calculate. Someone throws an insult. You don't defend yourself. You watch. You gather intel. What are they aiming to extract from you? What insecurity are they hiding behind the attack? Someone flatters you. You don't bask in it. You decode it. Why now? What's the motive behind this praise? Someone goes silent. You don't crumble. You grow colder. You let quiet become your blade, not your bruise. That's what it means to become psychologically untouchable. Not emotionless, but immovable. You feel it all, but you act on nothing unless it furthers your endgame. If someone pushes your limits, you don't explode, you don't twitch, you reveal no reaction. Why? Because your mind isn't public property. It's a citadel, and only those you choose are allowed past the gates. That's how you stop being controlled. Most men are laughably easy to manipulate. Say they're not enough. They'll talk endlessly to prove you wrong. Compliment them. They'll attach themselves to you. Withdraw your affection, and they'll beg to be seen again. That's not strength, that's programming. And unless you break the system, you'll always be used by someone sharper. So how do you rebuild yourself? You eliminate the urge to be understood. That's the core flaw. The desire to explain, to be recognized, to be validated. That's what makes you controllable. Destroy it. You weren't built to be decoded. You exist to shape the environment with purpose, precision, and silence. You also discard the fear of being dismissed, because the Stoic thinker doesn't chase belonging. He controls entry. You're not hoping for an invitation. You want others to worry about what happens once they're no longer allowed near you. Then you crush the reflex to respond emotionally. Emotions are real, but unless turned into tools, they're useless. Feel rage? Use it to advance. Feel belittled? Turn it into leverage. Feel underestimated? Channel it into silence, and let your results deliver the blow. This is how unshakable men are forged, not robotic, unignorable. Because once no one can steer your emotions, all they can do is witness your moves and quietly dread your next one. Let others run after harmony and connection. You pursue precision and command, because the world doesn't react to how you feel, it reacts to what you project. Direction, certainty, pull. And when your identity becomes solid at the core, you turn into a threat, not because you're aggressive, not because you're loud, but because no one can reach you. The people around you will test your edges. They'll compliment you, dismiss you, try to provoke or tempt you, but nothing will land. You remain steady, distant, focused, unreadable. Eventually, they stop attempting to manipulate you. Why? Because they come to a sobering conclusion. You're the one person they cannot influence. This is your ultimate evolution. It's not about your stance, your voice, or how you dress. It's who you've become at your core. You're no longer shaped by opinions. You do the shaping. You define the energy in the room. You rewrite the rules. You decide the outcome. You don't require approval. You're not waiting to be embraced. You've stopped needing anything from anyone. And that's exactly why no one can touch you. Rejection cuts the weak like a wound. But to the powerful, it's intel. It's a message from the world saying you were too available, too easy to access, too eager to be accepted. Good. Now you know exactly what needs to be eliminated. Understand this clearly. Rejection isn't personal, it's positional. People push away what they believe they don't need. So when they chose to exclude you, it wasn't a blow, it was information. They revealed where you stand in their world and where they stand in yours. And that means you're now free to reposition, to strike later when they're vulnerable and you've become unreachable. First rule, never show a reaction. The instant you display pain, they've won. And it's not even about them, it's about what you're becoming. A Stoic mind doesn't flinch when a door closes. It makes the entire room colder. You weren't turned down, they lost the privilege of proximity. Rejection only gains power if you acknowledge it. So instead of reacting, you evolve. Second rule, pull your presence like a blade. What happens when something taken for granted vanishes? Its value becomes undeniable. That's exactly what you deliver when dismissed. You disappear. No messages, no emotional exit, just a deliberate void. And while they feel your absence, you rebuild. A wise man once said men forgive deep wounds, but not small ones. So don't retaliate. Make them irrelevant. Make your silence speak louder than anything you could say. Leave them questioning where you went, how far you've risen, and if they ever mattered to begin with. Third step, change the storyline. Rejection only has power when it appears you were chasing something. So rewrite the script, not for them, but for yourself. You weren't dismissed. You removed yourself from a situation that no longer deserved your presence. You allowed them the space to reject because you were studying their behavior. You gave them a single moment to prove they could recognize value when it stood in front of them. They failed. And in that failure, they handed you all the data you needed. Now you disappear and ascend. Fourth step, turn rejection into leverage. This is where the shift happens. Rejection brings clarity. Most people live in confusion, unsure who respects them, who uses them, who fears them. But rejection slices through the fog. Now you see who's blind to your presence. Now you know exactly where your influence hasn't reached yet. So what do? You sharpen your image. You fine-tune your presence. You elevate your value so loudly that those who once ignored you are now forced to explain themselves every time your name is mentioned. And when they inevitably come back, they will, you won't need to decline them. You've already ascended beyond their level. That's real control, quiet, permanent, precise. Fifth step, turn your return into a weapon. The aim is never revenge. That's emotional. Your strength is calculated. You're not out to settle scores. Time will take care of that. You reappear only when your presence makes them uneasy, when your results are undeniable, when the space they once thought you didn't belong in is now shaped by your dominance. And when the one who dismissed you is forced to witness your rise, you stay silent. No smugness, no sarcasm, no pride, just a look, or better, none at all. Because now you're not hoping to be let in, you've become the example everyone's measured against. Last truth, rejection isn't failure. It's the test, the checkpoint, the fire that shows you what must be frozen, what must be severed, and who must be left behind. So etch this into your mind. You weren't turned away, you were redirected, pushed toward a version of yourself that never begs, never trembles, never waits for approval. Now go vanish into your silence, and come back as a presence too powerful to deny, even if they try to. You weren't just encouraged, you were rebuilt, not stirred, not uplifted, redesigned from the inside out. You didn't silence self-doubt with feel-good slogans. You crushed it with motion, with action. You didn't wait for certainty, you made moves. And through movement, you discovered something rare. That real power doesn't belong to those who appear flawless. It belongs to those bold enough to act anyway. You took dismissal and turned it into momentum. You stopped chasing validation. Now they feel the weight of losing you. You became limited, intentional, quiet, and they noticed. You stopped walking into rooms hoping to be embraced. Now you dominate them through your posture, your stillness, your precision. You no longer talk just to talk. Now you speak as if contradiction isn't an option. And most important of all, you rewired your identity. You're no longer easy to figure out, no longer easy to shake. You've become unreachable, untouchable where it counts. They can't provoke you, can't tempt you, can't manipulate you, because now you belong to no one. And that's exactly why you're unforgettable. You've become the man they observe in silence, the one who used to chase, now pursued, the one who once asked, now decides.